a long time coming, a couple hours coming.
It's okay. It will get better over time. You'll get into like a second.
All right. So this is the first podcast. Laura has been super grateful and patient with me as I've taken probably 2 hours to set up this podcast, but thank you.
Well, I'm learning for myself, so that's good. It's good to watch you, so I don't do the same mistakes.
Yeah, learning together. So maybe, where should we start? Since this is the first podcast, I can just do...
I think we just start with you. Like, who are you first, and what are you trying to do?
Sure. So my name is Logan. I kind of did the traditional tech background stuff, but got into the crypto scene in 2017. But throughout that, kind of kept with it. Now have gone full-time in crypto and trying to learn from other smart people. So yeah, I guess that's like a super brief background. We could probably get more into it later, but
we'll absolutely will, yeah.
Let's chat about you.
So a bit about myself. So yeah, my name is Laura. Currently I work at LedgerPrime, which is a multi-strat fund. And a bit of my journey in crypto, I guess. The first time I heard about Bitcoin was back in 2013.
Nice.
My business school had an ATM machine on campus.
That's awesome.
And I was trying to withdraw cash, and it was at one of the restaurants on campus. And the owner of the restaurant told me, "No, this is not a regular ATM machine. This is a cryptocurrency ATM machine."
Yeah.
At that point, I was like, "What? Cryptocurrency isn't like you're talking about digital money? Isn't the euro pretty much digital as well, right? Because of like all the bank transactions."
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I didn't really give it that much thought. Like back then, I mean, I wish I did, but I just
that is pretty.
I remember thinking about it for a little bit more and just talking about the exchange rate then and what it was, but I just forgot about it until 2017. I was lucky enough to go to a school that we did have some classes that mentioned blockchain a few times,
mm-hmm.
and we did like a few projects and whatnot, and we researched a little bit on it. But it was not until 2017 that I moved to Boston for grad school. And then there, I took a class it was in cybersecurity,
nice.
Where they put together law students and computer science students. I did CS in grad school to write papers on some framework anything that we wanted to choose that the US basically had no.
Yeah.
Not a lot of regulation on it, or like not that much. So my team, we actually did not talk about crypto. We talked about bioweapons, but which is very different. But
Using
I had
cryptocurrencies?
to grade. No.
Okay.
But I had to grade a paper from someone that actually wrote it on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies.
Okay.
That was 2017, and then from there, started dipping my toes a little bit, buying here and there, whatnot, and.
Yeah.
A year or two later, I decided to move full-time into crypto.
Okay.
I first worked at LedgerX, which was the first CFTC-regulated exchange for Bitcoin options and futures.
Was that directly out of your master's program?
No. Out of my master's program, I first worked in consulting for a year.
Okay.
And I don't regret it because it taught me a lot of process, but it was a painful year, yeah. And then actually throughout my master's, I got involved with the crypto community in Boston.
Okay.
And I became one of the members at Women in Blockchain, and
nice.
And then just organizing events together.
So is that kind of like allowed you to like get introduced more so into meeting interesting people in the crypto markets?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I got pretty connected with the crypto community in Boston, and they were just like blowing on my mind every day, right?
Yeah.
Just great people, very smart people, great conversations, and I got more and more interested in crypto also because before grad school I worked in Amsterdam.
That's
the
awesome.
Market maker for environmental commodities.
Okay.
And that was the whole point for me of going to grad school. So I work in that company because I thought that environmental commodities were actually doing something good for the world in a way. But through working there, I realized that it's a compliance product that kind of like makes more harm than good. Like the idea behind environmental commodities is really good, but applied is actually, it hurts a lot of like small and medium-sized companies. So my idea was to study computer science, specifically data science in grad school, so I could build some like environmental models or some financial models to show other ways of basically, I guess, like saving or improving the environment that is not through this compliance financial products that So anyway, so when I got to grad school, just like life, right, I ended up learning more about crypto, and I figured that that would be a better way, or that I could make a better contribution there to make the world a better place. Kind of like cliche, but that's and now look at us, 2022.
That's awesome. That's a cool story. How has it been kind of like, I guess, for the people that don't know these specific companies that you have worked at in the past, could you just give like a brief overview of each and kind of what they kind of contribute to the different communities?
Yeah. So starting with LedgerX, one of the reasons why I actually like that company over other companies that I was looking to work for is because they recently launched, when I started there, they had just launched what they call minis, which is a smaller contract size of Bitcoin options.
Gotcha.
So up until then, on their platform, the contract size of an option was 1 Bitcoin. And it was also 2019, 2018, 17. So the price was very different than today. But that was the contract size. And it was also most institutional. They didn't have access to retail then. But then when they launched the retail platform together with that, they also launched the smaller contract size. And even in other options platform like Delegate, the contract size is 0.1, I believe. So so it was still like smaller than anywhere else, and it's also tailored to the US customer because it's a regulated platform. So I kind of like the idea of democratizing finance, right, and giving access to everyone in the market. Also, one different thing or one like different characteristic between equity options and crypto options is that equity options, they have a 100 multiplier, right? So when you buy one stock or one call option, you're actually committing to 100 stocks. But in crypto, there's no multiplier. So it really allows you to, from one side, build a directional position, and from the other side, also just like build a position yourself depending on how you are trading these options, right? So I like that, and it was a very cool opportunity because a very small team, and I was able to see a little bit like from the front to the back of the business.
That's awesome.
I work really close with the CEO as well as the VP of Sales and Operations. And it was a great year. I mean, that was throughout 2020, so it was beautiful to see the growth of the platform. We did like between 15x and 20x growth in terms of users throughout the first year of COVID, I guess. And it was a lot of fun.
I think one of the things that I've been amazed by as a whole is just how much crypto grew during the year of like 2020 and 2021. What were you doing actually? During 2020? So I left Tesla at the end of 2020. Was working there on their supercharging division, but I realized that even as much as Tesla worked, you couldn't out-compete like composability, and composability is just like those kind of like open API calls. I admire your background much more in the tech and the finance side, because I'm more still trying to learn the finance side. But from the tech standpoint, I was just amazed about how quickly you can iterate and how these applications can kind of be building blocks for each other. And then so for the year of 2021, I just kind of became a full-time investor in the space, and kind of became obsessed with like the layer 1 blockchains and how those scale. So I put a lot of focus and emphasis on that because, like you said, like I think if you can actually democratize this for the vast majority of people, they become much more interesting. That more so that everybody can use them. Right now, like kind of starting with the complex products that your teams are working on, and then continuing to like not dumb it down, but continue to offer like different product suites over time, like that everybody can use. I mean, I think that's kind of what I've been interested in. So yeah.
So 2021, did you spend like basically the year just reading and like what happened in 2021?
Yeah, 2020 was super interesting. I started off in California. I moved back to California. Was there for like 6 months, and then everybody kind of was talking about Miami. I'm sure, as you saw, and Miami kind of looked like a cool place to live. So I decided to move to Miami for the second half of the year, and I've really come to enjoy it. I appreciate that it's crypto forward, and there's a lot of sun. There's a lot of interesting people like you, and a lot of founders that I've met in Miami as well. And so it's been, I've appreciated Miami so far.
I enjoyed that about Miami. Yeah, when I first moved here I first came here in March for a couple weeks.
You were early.
I was early-ish, I guess, but I was not that early. Some people came here directly already December 2020, just because it was nice to be here outside and stuff.
Yeah.
But I came here March 2020 for a couple of weeks. I had a friend that he had they were staying here, so stayed there just to feel a little bit the vibe. And at first we were in South Beach, and it was during like spring break, and if you all remember, it was all over Twitter how crazy it got. Like they actually had to like shut down the bridge at some point. No. Like, yeah, it was pretty crazy. So we were there, and at first I was like, wow, do I really want to live here? Like this looks kind of crazy, right? Yeah. This is not a place where I want to bring my parents, right? Like I don't want them to see this. They're not gonna enjoy it. So, and then a few days I came down to Brickell, and it felt like, I don't want to say like New York, but a little bit more something that I would enjoy, or like I would transition through before I go to South Beach or somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that's and then I was living in LA, so I went back to LA for like a month to wrap up my stuff there, and then I moved to Miami in May. And then at the beginning it was nice because that was right before the Bitcoin conference. So, and that was the very, very first conference after COVID, and whatever, people were flying in and stuff. And so a few of them came here before Bitcoin Miami, and then others stayed after. So it was a really, really fun first month and a half in Miami.
Yeah.
And then suddenly everyone left.
Yeah.
So it was kind of depressing for a couple of weeks because nobody was in the city anymore. They all left for New York or whatnot. And then I went to New York for my birthday, and it was so fun that I ended up staying longer, and it took me a little bit to come back to Miami, but yeah, now I'm enjoying it. It feels a lot more people have moved down here, especially since you moved. I feel like August onwards, there's been another migration, especially probably because people don't want to be here in summer.
Yeah,
I would not be here in summer. I think I'm not even gonna be here this summer, so
going back to New York.
Probably Europe.
Nice.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been impressed by, or just I think is kind of wild, is just how much people in the crypto industry travel. And I guess as someone that has kind of traveled a lot to these different places and been to many different conferences and got to see many different points of view, how has that kind of shaped your thoughts on the crypto industry, or what do you find is unique about that versus other industries?
Yeah, I think that the travel comes also because there's still, even though the industry is growing, there's still very few of us working full time, right? So it's part of the business development, sales part, strategy, whatnot. And it's nice. Sometimes it feels like you're just meeting up with the same people in different locations. Yeah. But it's also a way to build community and build trust with the people you're traveling with. So, and it's also a way to just spread the word, right? There are sometimes few companies. I always like end up enjoying these conferences because you always meet a few people that you wouldn't meet otherwise if you stay in your city.
True.
Even if you try to schedule a meeting, sometimes it's like easier to bump into someone and then just have a conversation and schedule something later. So the way, also crypto is global, right? Someone was asking me yesterday, what is the crypto headquarter? Like, where would you say tech is Silicon Valley? Where would you place crypto, like the headquarter? I'm like, that's a good question. I mean, what would you say?
I mean, selfishly right now, I'd say Miami, but
but
outside of Miami, I would just say it's dispersed, and that's one of the things that I more so appreciate, that you don't have to be in a specific location, and those opportunities are provided globally, where in the past, I would say like even prior to like 2017, or really until this past year, or a couple of years, where like you were supposed to be in Silicon Valley.
Right.
And I appreciate that that is no longer the case, and that norm has shifted.
Right.
Because it's kind of idiotic now with all the technology that we have, that you have to be in a specific one place. And I appreciate that crypto has kindly pushed the bar so far that anybody in the world can contribute, and these conferences are global. So I appreciate that they are, it's cool that they think globally instead of just in one geographic location.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I like the most about crypto, right? Like the remote aspect of crypto. And then even before 2017 or so, it's always been a pretty mobile industry. Like all the ETH conferences, they were always in different places, and people gather in different places. And also the developer community is all online, right? So even themselves outside of their full-time jobs, like before crypto, all the forums and stuff, like you have people responding from everywhere in the world. So I love that aspect of crypto. There's good brains everywhere, right? So it's a great way to connect all of the brains together.
For sure. So I guess maybe to bring the conversation back to more so like what you have been working on currently, could you dive in, I guess, like a little bit more deeper? I mean, so you touched upon, I think, LedgerX.
LedgerX, yeah.
Do you want to like
what
speak about
after LedgerX?
Yes.
After LedgerX, I actually got a great opportunity to join Paradigm, which is an electronic OTC network for crypto options and futures. And just to give some stats, Paradigm, I'm not sure exactly the numbers right now, but until I left, they did around 30% of the global options volume for Bitcoin and Ethereum, which is, it's nuts. I'm assuming now it's even bigger, but so really great team. I was there for about a year, and it was great personal and professional growth. But at some point at the end of last year, I started realizing that I had spent some time on the infrastructure exchange side, and I understood that side really well. And then I also understand the institutional space in crypto really well. But I felt it was time for me to go at the fund side, right?
Yeah.
And then I mean, last year, I guess for everyone, it was a really, really crazy year.
Yeah.
So I also needed a little bit of time for myself. I had barely seen my family in 2-3 years because of COVID. I went home for my sister's wedding over summer, and it was just like also crazy with like growth and stuff with the company, that I was barely able to like spend time with them. So I felt I owed it to myself and my parents to just.
I feel like you and I could have like a whole separate future conversation on another podcast just about like crypto and mental health.
Oh gosh, yes. No, I'm all for it. That's really important. We should definitely touch it on time, but you should dedicate time for yourself, because otherwise,
fully agree.
It's especially I think the two of us. I mean, at least myself, I'm someone that if you invite me out, I'll never say no to something, right? Because it's just like fun, or you don't know who you'd be able to meet, or right? Like it's not even FOMO at that point, but it's just so nice to be with people in the space that I don't want to say no.
Yeah.
And most recently, I started to say no. But so from there, I took a little bit of a break and spent time with my family. It was actually the first time I spent like 5 weeks home with my parents.
That's awesome.
first time in my life. It was besides like of course when I was younger, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, and then I joined LedgerPrime, who I already know LedgerPrime from my LedgerX days, because so LedgerPrime was a market maker on LedgerX, and yeah, so from there, it's also hedge fund. So the fund has grown right now into different strategies, and now we're focusing a lot on like OTC desk for options and treasury management, and well, those are basically my focus for the year. And yeah, it's great. I already knew most of the team from the LedgerX days, and then just because I've always worked with them. Also, Paradigm, they were market makers on Paradigm. And just, well, crypto's so small that you end up always hanging out with them. And yeah, I was really close with the whole team, so it felt like the right move for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
And a few of them are in Miami, others in New York, so it's good. I say them pretty often.
That's awesome. And so I guess like I don't know about market making as much. Could you like go a little bit like deeper into like what market making kind of entails and how LedgerPrime kind of provides that service?
Yeah, so market making, in few words, is just providing liquidity on exchanges or any decentralized like protocol, or yeah, anything that basically needs liquidity in like very simple terms. But and you can provide liquidity at different levels, right? In our case, we focus on options. I'd say like 95% of our market making strategies go through options. That's where our expertise is, and where also the team, the founding team, they already had a really good background on electronic market making. And yeah, so options, futures, spot, like those are the main products where in general I would say like market makers specialize on one or the other one. In our case, we started on the options side, and then something that you see a lot with market makers and liquidity providing is that a lot of them end up also by the way I say is like the natural course of crypto. That's how our OTC desk came to existence. Because in our case, after market making all these exchanges, people start knowing about you, and then they reach out to you on the side and they ask you to price different assets or digital assets, and then also different structures, right? So when you market make on these exchanges, all these different exchanges, you do it via API, and then you connect the strategies that you run on those exchanges with your risk models.
Gotcha.
And then I'm not that familiar with like the spot side, but at least on the derivative side or on the option side, that also leverages a lot of your long and shorts and all the different Greeks and stuff. So it also depends on the thesis of the fund. In our case, we started pretty much delta neutral when we launched the fund, and now we're taking somehow a bit more of direction, but it's mostly market makers are like mostly delta neutral, right? Which means that the way a market maker makes like their business model is from the spread between buying and selling all the time.
Gotcha. And I guess the more liquidity, the tighter the spreads can be. Or
exactly. Yeah, exactly. The more liquidity, the tighter the spreads are. And that's something that you see a lot right now. So on the option side, Bitcoin and Ethereum, of course, are the two digital assets that have the most liquidity. And even so, it's not even that liquid, right?
Yeah.
It's probably one of the most liquid markets in crypto, but there's still a lot of work to do there. And when you start pricing other assets, you have the spreads are a lot wider, because also the vols are a lot higher.
Yeah.
And it becomes a little bit more complicated there. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
LedgerX is primarily just focused on the institutional side. Do they have a retail
yes,
side
exactly.
as well?
So LedgerX has both institutional and retail. They started with institutional in 2017.
Okay.
That's when they got the licenses from the CFTC. And then 2019 they launched a retail platform.
Okay. Awesome. And both of those just took off, I'm sure, during the last couple of years.
They did. So what is actually interesting about LedgerX is that, well, now of course last October FTX acquired LedgerX, so now it's FTX US derivatives. But what's actually interesting about LedgerX is that you hear a lot of conversation about, oh, there's no liquidity, there's no volume, it's grown a lot ever since inception. But also if you compare, because the other regulated exchanges in the US, or the other one that has some volume, is CME.
Okay.
And CME on the future side, they're actually pretty solid. And on the option side, if you compare the volume to LedgerX's volume is not that much bigger.
Okay.
And then the one thing to note as well is that CME has margin through the FCMs, right? So you can't trade directly in CME. You need to go through FCMs like TradeStation and other FCMs, and then but you can do it directly on LedgerX, right? But LedgerX does not have margin, and that's something. A couple days ago, actually, the CEO Zach Dexter, he announced that they are actually, for the first time, they submitted a request to CFTC to allow 24/7 margin.
Oh wow.
That in the US, this has never, it's the first time
Nice.
it's ever existed, also because it's a 24/7 market, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
So once, hopefully if that's approved soon, we'll see a lot more volume going through LedgerX or FTX US derivatives. And that's also, allowing margin is also very important for market makers, because for a market maker, for us, it's a lot more expensive to market make on platforms that are fully collateralized.
Yeah.
Because that will, it's also worse for like the buyer, the seller, because the premiums are a little higher because of that.
Okay. Very interesting. How do you personally kind of think about like the decentralized like finance space that's still kind of like closed source versus like DeFi and like just like protocols themselves?
Is it more like, how are we going to move like market making, CeFi, DeFi?
I guess just like, how do you view like DeFi versus like TradFi versus like kind of like the hybrid approach, or like bridging the gaps with like LedgerX or
CeFi would
LedgerPrime?
sit in between TradFi and DeFi somehow. But then in CeFi, you also have offshore and onshore exchanges, right?
Yep.
And that's another big question. People are saying, what's going to win, onshore or offshore?
Yeah.
There's no winner.
Yeah.
They're both going to be there.
Yeah.
And if you have an offshore account, you're going to go offshore. There's benefits to it, and from like taxes to potentially even like lower costs, like lower trading costs or whatnot. But then you're still gonna need the regulated exchanges, because not everyone can go offshore, especially like the regular user. They're not gonna be able to set up an offshore account. And then there's still a lot of funds in the US that, because of their policy or who they are, what they're doing, they need to stay onshore, right? So that volume will still be there. And then when you enter DeFi, what's going to happen for the TradFi guys is that they're going to need like some sort of like permission DeFi structure. So that's why, I mean, you have like, example Maple, right?
Yeah. Shout out Maple.
Yeah, exactly. Hi, Sid. Another example, like MetaMask, it just last year they came up with institutional MetaMask, right? So you're gonna need like this little bridge for the US accounts to be able to go directly on DeFi, because I'm sure this is how the regulation is gonna go towards, right? Like you can go DeFi, that's fine, but the authorities need to know how the money is moving and who is owning what, and if you're sending some funds to whatever address, who owns that address, right? So that's at least for like the fully onshore ones. So yeah, I think we'll find it's just going to be a complex system like what we have right now, but there's going to be room for everything.
No, that's a perfect answer. It's super interesting just to like kind of see, I mean, how it has been unfolding and like kind of like extrapolating that out, like with like the permission pools. I think Aave is doing something similar as well with like the permission borrow and lending pools. But yeah, it's interesting just how it's all kind of molding together.
Right. In the end, what they want to know is if someone is going to default, who do they have to blame for that? Who can they go after? Yeah. So that's the only thing. I think that's where everything comes down to.
That makes sense. I guess like one thing that surprised me during the 2020s or more so 2021 was like NFTs and how popular they became. Is there anything that surprised you over the like last couple of years that you're like, I totally did not have this on my bingo card, but holy shit?
I think we all have this feeling of when I remember when like things started picking up in 2020. I think it was like fall 2020. I even have friends that they were just doing like really dumb things like a unicorn and then just like make it an NFT and whatnot and like to the moon or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then 2020's fall, there was like this little big hype. And we all kind of thought that was it, right? And then 2021, I think every quarter we all had again the same feeling, like there was like a little bit of like NFT hype or like crazy NFT hype, and then everyone was just like, okay, that's it. And then it kept on going, and still today it keeps on going.
Yeah.
So I do have the feeling of like, when is this gonna stop? I'm all for. I'm not particularly familiar with the whole ecosystem, but I do think there's a really good use case for NFT that we're still kind of exploring right now. And then the only thing that really surprises me about it is just using NFTs as collateral for loans. That's the only thing that, I mean, it's great, right? Like I'm happy that there are new products and different ways of using NFTs, but it's a really subjective, I don't know, like asset, or I don't even know what you want to call it, but
not super liquid.
If suddenly, but if suddenly someone comes and says, "Oh, this NFT is like worthless right now," and then the floor price drops to, because that's how they look at they collateralize the, right, like they check like what's the floor price, and from there they structure everything. But what if someone comes and then the floor price just like completely.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't talked to too many teams trying to solve that problem. I know there are quite a few, but I've kind of had the same questions as you. I'm confident over the long term they'll like figure out like a sustainable way to make it happen.
Yeah.
But it is super interesting. And like then if you have like a rare NFT, like how do you categorize that?
I would be like 99% sure that this use case would not be used, like using an NFT as collateral for like, if you want to borrow to do whatever, that borrowing is not going to be used for trading at an institutional level. I'm pretty sure that's not, maybe for other things, yes, like more low risk strategies, but I don't see some of the big boys like borrowing and hey, here's this NFT as collateral. I don't think the risk teams would allow it.
No, it is super interesting.
What do you think?
With like the DeFi versus CeFi or just NFTs?
NFTs. What's your NFT intake?
I don't know. I think what has been interesting to me is like during 2020 we saw like all the cool things that happened with composability, and these applications kind of like stacking on top of each other and how they can interact with each other, and from those interactions kind of make something more meaningful than the sum of the parts, and that was super interesting to watch. And that was why I was still at Tesla, and I was like, this is nuts. Like we can't beat these people because they're just like building apps that plug into each other and they all make each other better. But I was pretty positive at that point, like everybody else was going to be like, holy shit, DeFi. But that was not the case. It wasn't really until I was trying to show all my friends like DeFi, and I was like, hey, this is super cool. Like try this stuff, like try Uniswap, try like Comp and Aave. And none of them really cared. And I was like, I was confused by that. I thought everybody thought it would be much cooler because I did. But NFTs to me were, I mean, definitely have taken the world by storm. And I don't think very many people predicted that. I think it's been cool to watch these communities form, and people identify with like a certain group and then help each other for whatever their stated goal is. That's been super neat. I'm curious how like, I mean, I like to use like the analogy of like, or like with Tesla, like they came out with the Roadster, then the Model S and X, and then they have the Model 3. I think like NFTs will probably go through like a similar like series of iterations.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like the first batch is like profile pictures, and then I don't know, the next batch is like more utility, and then I don't know what the third batch is going to be.
Right.
But like, or more so just like that continual progression will kind of make NFTs more interesting as a whole.
Yeah, more like exploring right now what the uses for the future. Yeah. Question for you. So your last few months at Tesla, was there kind of like an exodus? Like, did anyone else leave to explore more crypto that what was the talk? Like, were people talking a lot about crypto while you were there, or was people are excited about it, or was it more like, what is this scam? Like, someone just got an airdrop?
Much more the latter.
Okay.
There was only one other person that was deep into the crypto, and him and I had different viewpoints on where it was going to go. He was very interested in Bitcoin, and he is an extremely smart dude. He focused more on like the money aspect, and I focused more on like the technology aspect. So I was naturally much more interested in Ethereum at the time, and he was very much interested in Bitcoin. He ultimately left and joined Square, and works on Cash App from like the Bitcoin side. And I just went the full-time investing. But besides him and I did not find anybody else that was particularly interested in cryptocurrency at that point in time. Right after, they implemented where you could pay for a car with Bitcoin. But
you were not there for that anymore.
No.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much I can talk about Tesla. I would just say, I mean, Elon has a lot of influence.
Yeah.
And if Elon wants something done, it will get done.
Yeah.
And so on like the other side of that, I think like in some part, like we didn't discuss crypto outside of like our immediate teams. It's just because everybody's always running around doing something.
Right. Yeah.
Like there is no time to be like, so what do you think about X, Y, and Z? Because everybody's like, has 10 billion things to do, and you have to do those 10 billion things.
Yeah.
And to adding another thing just like is too much.
Yeah, it's just not time efficient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we really didn't discuss it about too much. I tried to like crypto pill some people, but it was very, very inefficient. I found a lot of my crypto endeavors until recently very unfruitful. And I wanted to get more people in, but I think for the vast majority of people, like seeing is believing.
Yeah.
And now seeing is believing. I'm interested though, like if we actually do go into a bear market, how that will affect people's perceptions again.
Right. Yeah. I don't
Not
know
that
we're
we
gonna go.
are or are not.
It's kind of a weird market right now, but I don't think we're gonna go fully into a bear market the way we saw in 2018. I think it's gonna be a bit more of like, I don't know. I'm thinking like range trading a little bit. There are gonna be a lot of from L2s that are just gonna die at this point because like they haven't really produced anything, to a lot of this other altcoins that they're gonna disappear, right? But I feel that a lot of the flow is gonna go more into L1s, and probably like the top like 5-10 that are actually building, and we're gonna stay like this for a little bit. But I don't think it's gonna be a dramatic.
Those 70, 80, 90% drawdowns. I have PTSD from those.
Yeah. I mean, we are okay. So from all-time high 2021, which was between April and May. If nobody sold out of their position and they just like hold whatever they had, everyone should be down between 70 and 80%. Still up from 2020, right? But between 70 and 80% down from all-time high.
Yeah.
So there goes your drop. And then I think right now it's just also on a macro environment. Things are wild right now. So
they are.
So it's I think everyone is just like hedging at this point, and that's it. Yeah,
no, it's super interesting. I mean, living through that 2017 bear market, I don't know if it's positive or a negative at this point, because all that baggage of those drawdowns, they stay with you. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, volume wise, what happens a lot at LedgerX, for instance, when there was a bit more like, especially in options, if there's not that much volatility, there's when vols are low, a lot of traders do not trade as much because it's not as quote unquote fun. But so you see like less volume, but even now, the volumes have remained pretty much the same. So there hasn't been a
Interesting.
drop in volume. And if anything, on the OTC side, at least from LedgerPrime, we've seen a lot more volume on the
Okay.
OTC side. So, which that's also given that just people don't want to crash the market, or they don't want to impact the market with their large trades throughout directly on the exchange. So that's a benefit of using OTC. But yeah, so we are not, maybe people are learning more about how to generate smaller yield and consistent yield instead of just going for the 20x, 30x trade, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, volume wise, it's been pretty healthy.
That's awesome. Good to know that, or hopefully that we will not major crash again. But yeah, even on like the yield farming side, that has been interesting as well. Does Ledger Prime provide like yield farming strategies or any
We
yield?
do have a yield or a DeFi team, yield farming team. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's part. So that's more of, we provide yield farming through our treasury management, and we do treasury management for either token projects, corporations, like more traditional corporations, high net worth individuals, etc. And then the yield farming is also just like part of the hedge fund strategy. So yeah, so we have a dedicated team, and we allocate like between 10 and 20% of the capital, depending on how the market is going or what opportunities we're seeing then. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I mean, all the different experiments that have been going on in like the DeFi farming space have been like super interesting to watch. I've kind of been looking at them from afar, but I haven't been paying as close to attention of them recently. But the whole space is interesting. I think the hard part is now there's so much going on compared to like even a year or 2 years ago that you kind of really have to pick your like specialty and your focus.
You do. Anyone that's trying to run yield farming strategies by themselves, and while they have another full-time job, it's just, yeah. And that's something, I guess that's like one of the selling points, right? Where it's like, listen, you can do it, but if you delegate it to someone else, you likely do a lot more yield, just because there's so much going on, and it's really hard to keep track of everything. The new things coming out, it's just not easy.
I guess like one of the things that I'm impressed by is your depth of knowledge in the financial markets and also like the technical side. So how did you, I guess, become so familiar with like just like the financial stuff? Was that through undergrad or just like something that you were personally interested in?
It's actually funny. I was speaking about it with one of our quants yesterday, how I wish I had spent a bit more time in traditional finance. I was there for like a bit more than a year, and then I did study finance undergrad and computer science grad school. So the mix of both, give me a good financial understanding. So one thing that I will complain that business schools should do, or at least like finance tracks, they should teach about financial infrastructure. That's something that I have never seen taught anywhere. And it gives you a better idea of how things are working, instead of just explaining you what an option is. I can read that online, right? But there's a lot of things that there's nothing in the books, or there's nothing you learn by just being in the industry or just doing your own research somehow. But yeah, so my learning was basically through that. It's been more whatever I learned in Amsterdam. I did had a really good team and a really good manager. Shout out to him. He's still like one of my heroes today. I still speak with him here and there, and he taught me a lot from the traditional side. And then at LedgerX, I was working every day with one of one of our active investors. He was working with us every day, and he also taught me basically a lot of what he knew. And he spent like 2 hours a day with me on calls during while we were all working from home, completely in lockdown. So yeah, I learned a lot from him there as well. And then part of my at LedgerX, we were also teaching retail customers what options were and futures, and then with the with Alexa, the VP of Sales and Operations, we built the whole support desk, and we also had like office hours week to week. So thanks to also all the retail customers that they would send sometimes questions, and I was like, okay, you need to grab a piece of paper and draw out what you're trying to do here, because either I'm not understanding what you're saying, or it's not well, like strategy is not well driven, or so a bit with like everything, I guess, life and experience, right?
Yeah.
And I got to understand for the first time what people meant about experience, because there's things that you can read and you can learn, but there's other skills that it just comes through like just years doing the same thing.
For sure. No, I think, that's one of the biggest things that I've learned as well, is you really just have to put your reps in. No matter like what skill you're trying to learn, the more reps that you can do, the better you'll just get at the thing over time.
Yeah, exactly. And then I feel I'm honored. I'm blessed to have like great people like you. A lot of the technical stuff that I've learned from you this past month has been amazing. So everyone pitched in because this guy is very smart. But so just from speaking with people, like one of the things I like about conferences is that you always learn. And sometimes you read things on Twitter that make sense, or you read from a Medium blog, Mirror, whatever. And then it's not until you listen to that speaker on a conference, or you talk to someone that says something that then you click and it's like, oh my god, that makes sense, now I understand why this is happening.
For sure.
So, and that's recently a lot of people are asking me or saying, hey, I want to get into Web3, where do I learn?
This is where I was gonna try to like segue to. I think now, I mean, throughout 2020 and 2021, and even like to the start of 2022, people are super interested. They want your knowledge. They want to learn about like the computer science stuff. They want to just learn about like the industry as a whole and how to break in. And I think your background is super interesting from the fact that you didn't go into crypto straight out of your master's program, but you met some interesting people and then kind of learned along the way. So how would you, or what like skills or recommendations would you kind of recommend to people that are looking to learn more about the industry or trying to get into crypto?
First thing I would, and that's because it's what I didn't work for me, get engaged with whatever community of crypto. And
buy NFTs?
I was going to say just go to meetups, but
probably better.
But you can buy NFTs if you feel like buying NFTs. Don't get my advice on that, because all my NFTs have gone to zero. But they're pretty, but they're just not, no value. But I would just engage with the local community and go to meetups and conferences, and then also maybe find a couple people that in the space that might have a bit of time to talk to you, like not on a weekly basis, but whenever. Like, do your own research, of course. And I guess the first and foremost, is what are you interested in, right? Yeah. You're really into the tech side. For me, it's more the finance side, and the idea of like democratizing or giving more resources to people, right? Others might be the artistic side of crypto and the property rights and whatnot, right? Other might be more infrastructure. So
a slight tangent. I think this is one of the beautiful things about the industry as a whole, is that there's so many different aspects that people approach it from that kind of all leads it back into this new technology.
Exactly.
And I find that fascinating, that everybody has their own different niche, but like I kind of describe it as the black hole that like swallows everything. But it's super interesting that how people get into the industry.
Yeah, if you think when the internet started, if someone wanted to get into the internet, again, get into crypto and just thinking it kind of the same words, you would not, maybe people were saying the same things like, hey, I want to learn about the internet, where can I start, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
What you put it really good a few days ago, where you were saying that blockchains are just like communication networks.
Yeah.
Same thing with the internet, right? So, I mean, basically the same thing. But so what is it? Or at least the question would be more like, what are you interested in?
Yeah.
And then see who's building what in crypto that's very similar to that, and then just get in touch with them, read about that, and then see what are the blockchains that are building more applications or more things related to that topic, and go from there.
No, I think that's great advice. Yeah, no, it's a fascinating space. There's so many moving parts and so many things to learn, so I like that. But I guess maybe we're almost wrapping up on like 50 minutes. Is there? And maybe like if you want to, we could talk about like mental health just briefly for like maybe 10 minutes.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So I think you and I have both worked in companies or put ourselves in positions that demand a lot from us. Some at different points in your career, I don't know, some jobs are more demanding, or the places that you put yourself in kind of have different cultures. I personally I would say not the best at always handling that. What are some of like the things that you learned looking back on it now that like either helped or didn't help, and how would you kind of approach it now?
My issue was like not setting the right boundaries, and now I've learned the hard way. But and I think that's the same with everyone. Sometimes we're like scared of setting boundaries because we think that would limit us towards our growth, right?
Yeah.
If I say what I think here, what I want here, then maybe they won't, right? Like it's all this like what if that ends up you end up doing a lot more than not a lot more than you can, but a lot you can do it, but you're gonna end up just like crashing yourself, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, my issue was just being scared and of like setting these boundaries, and then you end up just at some point you just, and it's there was nobody but like my fault, right? I should have been able to set up my boundaries, and that's what I wish I did. I was just scared for like many reasons. Just what if I don't get the job if I don't agree to this? Like I pushed already a knob on the offer, whatever.
Yeah.
This looks good.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not, right? Or you're just like scared of like looking around, and so that would be like maybe one thing. Just ask for what you think you're worth, and then you can take it from there.
For sure.
And
I think a lot of people do not ask for things. I mean, myself included. And I think the people that I have admired and that do things, I don't know, they're able to ask for the things, and then even if they don't get it, then they're still able to learn from that and move
I would
on.
go as far as saying you should always be able to speak up your mind.
Yeah.
And everything well communicated is fair game.
Yeah, I agree.
And speak up your mind, say what you think, and have an open conversation with the other part. If the other part does not react well to it, and in the end, like, if they don't react well, it's not your fault. It's always like a reaction. Like so it's just like, it's dependent on how they react. But the point here is maybe it's not the right place for you.
Yeah.
Right? Like you want to be somewhere where you are happy, where both sides appreciate each other, and where you agree on where your direction is going, what you're doing.
I like that.
So that'd be the first thing. Just like, don't be scared of speaking up and saying what you think you deserve or you think you're worth. And the first thing is like, know how much you're worth, which is also a really hard thing to discover. It's taken me a while to know what is the actual value I can bring in crypto. And then also because a lot of things I just had to go through a learning process, and now that this learning process is not complete, but at least with what I know now, I know what I can bring, and then I also know what else I need to learn. Or what else I want to learn at least. And then besides that, also take time for yourself, right? It's sometimes, and it happened to me in the past, where a very exciting account or whatever has asked me to schedule a call, and it's maybe 11 p.m. or like 5 a.m. for me, and I'm like, yes, it's fine, but it's really not fine, because sometimes it happens, and that's okay. It's crypto 24/7, but like if you stay in your own schedule, you can actually be a lot more productive than otherwise. And I've reached a point where like I just said yes to everything, and I was sleeping maybe 3 to 4 hours a day, and that was not 3 to 4 hours a day a couple times a week or 3 times a week. It's not that in the weekend I was able to sleep in, because I mean I had shifts and stuff, and then I had to wake up early as well, so I consistently slept between 3 and 4 hours every single day for a whole year. And again, that's nobody but my fault, because I could have just managed my time in a different way, or I could have said no to other things, right? So also I want to say yes to everything, because it's part of like growth. I need to say yes to everything, and I never really like took a step back and thought about, is this good for me or not? And if I feel like we're gonna go a little long maybe, but saying yes to everything. How long can I do this for, and how would that impact not only my current role but what I want to do later?
For sure.
Because even when I left previous company, it took me a long time to feel 100% again. I started at LedgerPrime that the first month I was still not, my head was not in the game.
Yeah.
Was really not. It was really hard, and I felt also really bad because the first month you really want to show that they hire you for the right reasons, and then first month I was just like, wow, I had to fight through myself, and then I also it almost made me feel like I was not good for the role.
Yeah.
And then suddenly there was this weekend. There was a conference, and that kind of like, it was a very chill conference, so met a lot of like great people, and that, I don't know, there was like the 360 there, and now I feel good, but it took me 2 to 3 months to feel good about it.
I admire that you were able to come through on the other side only after a couple months. I think one of the hardest parts after kind of getting beat down in a sense, whether physically or emotionally, is just kind of getting back up.
Right.
So that's awesome. So I think the 3 things are ask for what you want, set boundaries, and remind me of the third one.
Take time for yourself.
And take time for yourself. Yeah.
It's okay if you say no sometimes.
For sure.
Don't have FOMO. That's gonna happen again like the week after. So
yeah, very true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're closing in on an hour. I really appreciate you being my first guest and learning with me on all this. So
I'm
thank you very much.
Really honored. So
Thank you
thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura.